Hello, my beautiful humans, and welcome to the Becoming Human 2.0 Unscripted Podcast. I'm your host, Paul McFadden, and it's my mission to create global impact and cultivate real connections through having authentic conversations that matter. Today, I'm joined by my special guest, Diane Haworth, another beautiful human from Warrenton, Virginia. In this episode, we discuss awakening the divine, the power of meditation and love in transforming lives. And of course, this conversation was completely unscripted. Here's a quick peek, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. So enjoy. And remember, we are all here to discover, awaken, and evolve together.
If there is any issue in your life, any concern, any challenge, I would invite you to ask, how can I bring more love to this? More love to myself, more love to this relationship. How can I bring more genuine love that comes from the heart, not from the head? To me, that divine energy of love is always what's needed.
Diane, welcome.
Hi, Paul. I'm so excited to be here. And I actually love the idea of just having a heart-centered conversation. And I really appreciate the fact that's what you're here to promote. So thank you very much for that.
That's amazing. And thank you for being here as well, putting your hand up and stepping on the stage to share your insights, your wisdom, your thoughts, your perspective, any tools or strategies, anything that can help someone else become a better human being and have a better human experience. So I certainly appreciate and thank you for stepping on the stage. And I guess my first question for you, and I haven't asked this one all day, and I've had a few episodes that I've been doing, but who are you? Is Diane?
My response to that is just like you. I'm an individual spark of the divine. That's what I am. Now, in this human suit, I happen to be a mom, a grandmother, an entrepreneur, someone who's been studying high performance and actually metaphysical studies for 30 years. Like a lot of folks, I just was trying to find answers to problems in my own life. That's what I was doing. I went to church, I read books, I did videos, I listened to Oprah, and still something just wasn't clicking. And that's what led me on this path. And it's been a wild ride. And I wouldn't change a thing.
That's amazing. When do you feel was the first time you had that question just come to you intuitively?
I had a near-death experience 40 years ago, almost 40 years ago. So if you remember then in the mid-'80s, there was no internet. I live in a very small town in Virginia. There was no bookstore with NDE sections. I didn't know what the heck was going on. I had never heard of the white light and all of that sort of thing. But what occurred, obviously I made it, but I experienced such a profound love and acceptance. And I never, ever was afraid to die after that. Now, to be fair, never wanted to suffer, but I never was afraid to die because I had an instant realization of the continuation of everything, of our eternity, and how that golden thread of love and life goes through everything. So 40 years ago was when it first started. But like a lot of people, I had that experience and I thought, what the heck is that? And it took several more years because I settled back into what I thought was normal, what I was supposed to do at the time. And it took a while. What really opened me up was learning to meditate.
Okay.
That absolutely was a game changer for me.
So meditation, oh, please tell me more about that. I'm a meditation practitioner myself. Been practicing transcendental meditation for the last 8 years. Tell me about your practice.
Everyone has a different personality. My personality happened to be the one that has 6 or 8 guys in your head screaming all the time. "Yeah, what about this? What about this? Be afraid of that. Be afraid of this." That was just how that I thought everybody did that
Mhm.
until I started to meditate. And it's what that allowed me to do, and I had no idea this would be the effect, was to quiet those frantic ego-based voices and
Mm,
literally begin to hear the voice of what I call the divine within.
yeah.
All of a sudden, instead of all this screaming, shouting, be afraid of this and this, there was this beautiful, calm guidance that I just could never hear before because
Mm.
it was just drowned out by all the noise in my head. So meditation absolutely is a game changer for me. And it's been probably 30 years now that
Oh,
I've been
wow.
meditating.
That's amazing. It's such a meditation, first of all, is a gift. And I tell people who have spiritual practices, spirituality is something that is innate to and something that we all have access to.
Yep.
And how you want to practice your spirituality could be religious based. It could be more mind body based. It could be a lot of different ways to practice and build a spiritual practice. And so it's not left to one or the other. Not one is better than the other, but depending on how you use that, you can find balance and connection within yourself to a higher power, to consciousness, to the universe, to the divine, however you want to phrase that universally, but I would say love, energy.
That's it. That's it,
Right.
honey. That's what I say. I call love the expansive, creative, intelligent
Mm,
energy that
mm,
beats your heart and mind, that creates galaxies, that makes the tides come in and out.
mm.
That's within each one of us. And
That's
I
right.
know when I talk to some of my clients, they'll say, I have this problem and this is too big. And I'm like, maybe the intelligence that creates galaxies could figure out this accounting issue for you. Maybe,
Maybe. If
maybe there is some creative,
Mm,
loving solution that you just can't hear. And
right.
meditation is the door that opened that up for me. Yeah, it's just hands down, just absolutely the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I would agree. And I wish there's a desire, like I know like in my space, it's something that I wish I had learned when I was younger, adolescent, teens. Anytime before I turned the age of 21, I wish I had learned meditation or that had come into my life, but it didn't. But it came when it needed to come. There are a lot of practices that I've learned and I certainly tried to implement in the past, but I would say meditation, like you, was my doorway to actually connecting to who I truly am. And interesting enough, I got on this journey back in 2016. And it started off with meeting someone who was researching and talking about purpose. And it's interesting when you look at some of the research, right? So most people don't start asking the questions or don't listen to the question. Like the question gets asked. We asked that question at the age of 5. I'm going to say around 10, around 12, 13, 15, 16, 18, 21, 30. We keep asking the question. Sometimes that question gets drowned out by those who have influence over us. I did a talk a couple months ago on who are the dream killers. And in my conversation, I was sharing that, hey, we all had dreams and we all had this vision of what this experience was going to be or what it was going to look like. And then we told someone, and a couple things may have happened. Either we told someone and they said, no, you can't do that. And we believed them. Or we had some kind of experience that seemed to take the dream away. Or we experienced some kind of trauma or experience that then told us that, hey, maybe this is not the way, this is not the time to pursue that. Or we have an experience and it wakes us up, right? And it sounds like you had the experience where it was like, wait a minute, something else is going on here. And I love the idea of understanding that energetically, energy never is not created, nor does it die. It's always here. And there is an experience. We don't know what it is because our blinders are on. We don't see it. And there's programs that are running that we learned a long time ago that are those 8 voices in the head. Depending on how many programs you have, those are all the voices. And it's not until we get present that those voices start to fall off and fade away. And then you're left with the divine intuition of what we innately know in our soul and our spirit consciously, right? That's going to help guide us into the right direction. When you think about your experience, I talk a lot about calling, and I know sometimes calling change, right? You can be called to do something today, and then next week be called to do something much bigger and much broader. I feel like I went through that experience. But what do you feel like you're being called to do now in this stage where you are?
First of all, I just have to say, I love what you're saying. And as from where I am now, looking back on my life and seeing kids and grandkids and those sorts of things now, I am really encouraged that generations now are being brought up by meditators. You and I didn't have that.
We did not have that.
So that's a whole different thing. My 8-year-old grandson knows how to meditate. We've been doing that since he's 2. I can't say he'd rather play ball, but still, he knows what it is and all of that. As far as the calling and the purpose, I loved what you were talking about with purpose. My personal belief is that we all have the same purpose, but it looks different. To me, the purpose is to live love.
Yeah.
And when I was a young mother, I was doing that with children. As my parents aged, I was taking care of them. So the way that I was living my purpose might have morphed, but the live in love, right? That is my purpose, the way I look at it. And as this calling now, several years ago, I actually, in meditation, you'll love this, in meditation, had a full-bodied experience. And I was given a process on how people can learn to live love in the world. And that is now my passion and my joy to share that with people, because who needed that more than anybody else? Me. I did. It wasn't that I knew how to do it. I wanted it for myself. And when you experience something that's so wonderful, what do you want to do? You want to share it with everybody.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. That's how the oneness works. That's how it works.
I love it. It resonates on so many levels because we talking about purpose. I feel like there's one purpose, and I look at it like, and what you said, live love, right? I grow, which is living, give.
You got it.
Right? It's the same thing. Universally, that's what it is. How you do that is your calling.
That's
How
right.
you
That's your
grow.
flavor.
Exactly, right? And the way you do it is different, even though I'm feeling like it's a similar, there's an alignment, there's a resonance. And I think that I'm finding that there are more people that have understood that, and they're starting to align their lives around that, which I find beautiful. And I feel like it's like our calling is to help more people align with that. One, realize it. And I have this thing, it's like discover, awaken, evolve. Discover is attaining the knowledge and the education and the information to be able to create some awareness around, whoa, maybe I've been living this experience in a way that's not been useful for me and certainly not supportive of what I'd like to have happen. But then the awakening is really about, okay, now that I'm aware of that, what are some things that I can do? And start trying to implement some of these practices, some of these strategies. Many of these practices are ancient practices and they're not really complicated. Meditation does not have to be a complicated experience. We make it complicated by our resistance to it. And
Dive in our head. That's who makes it
and the ego and the programs getting in the way.
Yeah.
And so people get frustrated by the programs. And it's like, well, I try to meditate, but I got this thing going around. I'm like, well, okay, you have a frustration practice, right? Or I try to meditate and I just get anxious because I start thinking about all the things. You have an anxiety practice. I said, let go of the things, right? Those things, they're going to come. Let it go. And you will see that eventually they run out. It's like a program. It has a beginning and it has an end.
And the program will run until it runs to the end of the program, then it stops. Then what are you left with? Well, you're left with right now. I shared that with someone earlier. I said, I don't believe in coincidences. I don't believe in chance from that perspective. I think that, and I got this from Ram Dass, like every experience that we have leads to now. And if we stop attaching terms like good and bad and judgment on the experiences and just let the experiences be the experiences that our spirit, our soul, our consciousness needed to have, those experiences help make us who we are, and they brought us to this moment. Like our frequencies intersected now because of everything that happened to you, good or bad, happy or sad, all that, it doesn't matter. We're here now because of all those. I'm here now because of everything that happened with me.
Yep.
And then we're having this conversation, and someone shared with me that the only time that really matters is now.
And well, that's where your power is. And you said something really insightful about energy. And one of the things that I share with my clients and students is, where are you putting your energy? If you're putting it in past trauma, and I'm not a doctor or psychologist, if someone needs to deal with trauma, go to the professional you need to go to. My own experience has been, when I ruminated on the past or my fears for the future, I was not where I could make a change, which is in the now, in the ever present now. That's what meditation helped me do. Because the guys in my head were either back in the past or worrying about
Way in
the
the
future.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, of course, you and I had disappointment in our calendar. Of course, we're going to plan for things. Of course, we're going to do that. We have to do the human things.
Yep.
We got to do all the human stuff. And there is a beautiful intersection that the mystics talk about, where you are fully human and fully divine.
Yes.
And when we can live through from that space as much as possible, day to day, moment to moment sometimes, man, that's when we have really found that beautiful miracle of life in human form. That's when you become the human, the advanced human, the human 0.20, right?
Yep. And that's what I think about it too. We have been, I will say, as a society, in a state of imbalance. I couldn't tell you how long we've been there, because I don't necessarily know, and I don't want to pontificate on, we've been here for 2,000 years.
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. We're here in imbalance. And what I see around a lot is, like, people have things together physically. People are working out, and I got a great diet and all this kind of stuff. I've seen people pass away at younger ages who had physical workout and were on point with nutrition. But then you have to ask the question, where were they mentally? Where were they emotionally? Where were they spiritually? And those start to uncover some interesting truths about our experience and about the imbalance that exists. We see an endemic now, mental health. Mental health is not it's not a new discovery. This is not a new discovery, but now we're calling it an endemic. Now more people are clinically depressed and have anxiety. Okay, but that's been existing. We just put a different label on it, put a Band-Aid on it, and ignored it. Thank you for the pandemic for pausing everything in the world so we could actually see it. But this is not new. It just highlights the ever-present need for us as humans, as humanity, to start realizing, or to begin realizing, that all this potential that exists is within. Certainly there's technology that is there that certainly can help us in this advancement. We do need to be careful not to allow it to take over. And when you say that, people think, oh, well, the machines aren't going to take over. Nobody's suggesting that the machines are going to take over. But we do want to be careful about giving away our to the technology.
There's something called the transhuman movement.
Yes.
And my personal belief sounds like it might mirror yours. This energy inside, including, if you're a healthy person, your immune system, your intuitive abilities, when you're tapped into that, you are the bigger super computer than you have ever seen on a movie screen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But this is where you asked me earlier when that door started opening for me, when I realized my power was not external.
Mm.
It came from that internal connection to my own divine wisdom, which might be reach out to Paul, which might be start to meditate, which might be check out this podcast or read that book.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't coming from a fearful, ego-based place, right? That
Right.
true guidance comes from that inner divine wisdom, your soul self, whatever it is you want to call it, that spark of the divine. And
Right.
the difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It might take some people, they have to become aware of it. But boy, once you're aware of it, you get it pretty fast.
As you're saying that, I'm just thinking about when the light bulb went off for me. I think I hit a point where I'd been an entrepreneur for a good part of my life. And I had the entrepreneurial spirit when I was young because my father was an entrepreneur. And so I wanted to have that experience. I wanted to be my own boss, run my own show, all that kind of stuff that everybody talks about. Robert Kiyosaki went to the academy that I graduated from, the same academy that I went to. So I went to the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. So he was several, maybe 10 years ahead of me. And so I read his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to do this thing. So I had that bug. And though I did start off working for someone else, I eventually started my own businesses and I was pretty successful. And I hit a point where I felt like I've reached a pretty good space and I'm having all the successes that I need to have. And I got invited to speak at I'll be a facilitator in this Global Institute for Leadership Development. And I was like, wow. And I told my friends about it and I said, you need to go ahead and take that. That's really prestigious. If you're in that space doing that, do you know who this company is? They invited you to come do that. I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh, that's amazing. Like nobody gets that opportunity. And I'm thinking, I've made it. And then the guy asked me, this gentleman, I say guy, I don't want to be disrespectful. His name is Richard Leiter. He was probably at that time one of the foremost people doing research on the topic of purpose, on the subject of purpose. He was traveling to foreign countries, hanging out with indigenous tribes, people, talking to wise men and elders, and trying to figure out what purpose was and how they approach it. And he asked me, he said, Paul, he said, what are the two most important days in your life? And I immediately said the day that I was born, but I struggled with the second answer. And I hesitated because I wasn't sure. Was it my children? Was it the time when I graduated from high school or college? Was it all these different things? That was this achievement and had nothing to do with any of that. And he said, when I talked to all these indigenous tribes and these folks in all these countries, in different countries, the answer they gave me was the day to figure out why. And I was like, yeah, I think I asked myself that question about who I am and why I'm here a long time ago. And now that I'm in my 40s, it's coming back up. What happened to that question a long time ago? I don't know where it went and why I didn't pursue it, but then he asked it and I was like, okay, I'm listening. And then it changed the trajectory of everything that I wanted to do. And I had to answer that question. What am I here to do? And it's not an overnight answer for some of us. Some people get it right away. But I know for me, it was like, I'm sure. And I had to really do some inner work and do some introspection. And then I learned how to meditate. And then things started coming to me more clearly about this is what you're supposed to do. It's like that. You build it. If you build it, they will come from experience.
What a beautiful story. Yeah.
And it's like what you're describing. It will come to you. But you have to
be revealed.
Yeah. It will be revealed.
It will be revealed. I study A Course in Miracles. And one of the things that is one of the tenets of that work is really your job is to remove the blocks to love. Love is already there.
Mm-hmm.
However, you're to live love. I like to think of it as love to me is like going into the old Baskin and Robbins where there's 31 flavors of ice cream. Just like different flavors of love. Some days it's tutti frutti and some days it's rocky road, but it's all the same thing. We all are offering different flavors, and it could be through our books, through our speaking. It could be through our food. the way we take care of animals. It could be anything. There isn't anything greater than another as long as it is heart-centered.
Yeah.
That's the key.
I love the examples you're giving because I think a lot of times people think when I give, it sounds to me like I have to be giving money and I have to be doing this. No, it's not. It's taking care of your loved ones. It's taking care of elderly. It's taking care of children. It's taking care of animals. It's taking care of nature. It could be monetary. It could be anything. It's like you have to. We need to. I hate saying the word we need to and we have to. I want to say with better service.
We're invited to.
Yeah, we're invited to, right?
That's the way I look at it.
To explore our gifts, right? And explore what we're truly passionate about and what brings us joy and say yes to those things.
Say yes. That is the most profound insight right there. Say yes when you feel what's right and what's not right. And I love that you brought up that it looks different ways. I've been very privileged to be around much older people. And it was shocking to me at first in conversations, because a lot of times you'll have very deep conversations when someone is nearing the end of their physical life. And the amount of time somebody has said, my life changed because of one kind act this person did for me, that they would have no idea, right? That they had even done it. A kind word or an encouragement, just something that you wouldn't think made a difference. It's just living as best you can from that foundation of love every day enriches everyone. And not only, this is a point sometimes people forget, and I'm curious to see what you think about it. Giving is reciprocal. It's a giving and receiving, right? It's giving and receiving. And it's not that you wait for a gift when you give one. It could be the joy, the happiness that you see when you've done something that you were called to do, not that you thought you should do, but you were called to do. I know I've done some things out of love and not thought anything of it. And a couple weeks later, there would be this ginormous, fantastic, wonderful thing that it took me a long time to realize. This is the give and take that we're taught about. This is how love is cyclical. It doesn't have to be a direct. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I love that you're saying that because in my journey, my quest, what came up for me was I was called to do 5 things. I was called to awaken spirit in others. And I feel like I do that through conversation. I do that through my speaking. I do that through my direct interaction. I'm called to build relationships with others, which is why I love to meet new people and just have real conversation and kind of get to know who people are. And I just find I have a curiosity around people's experiences and the perception, particularly when I look at people globally, because I had an opportunity to do some global travel. And because of that experience, I'm curious as to what the experience was or is for other people in other places on the planet. I've been called to make connections, and that really has been making connections from a knowledge perspective. So taking concepts and seeing how they're interrelated and being able to bridge that gap and make the connection and then be able to deconstruct it and then make it something that's understandable. My friends always tell me, it's like, how do you take this complicated concept and make it sound so easy and so simple? I said, it is simple. I didn't say it was easy, but I could see like almost visualize the connection happen. It's like it's overlays. Like, here it is right there. You can't see that? Let me explain it to you.
So may I share something with you, sir?
Absolutely.
That is one of your soul gifts. That is a soul gift. And I'm sure you're aware of it. I don't know if you've ever called it a soul gift, but we all have soul gifts. Your friends were showing you, hey, this is something we don't have.
Absolutely.
You do, but we don't.
Right.
And I feel that we're called to share these soul gifts, whether it's singing or writing, or that is a particular skill set to take the complicated and to put it into a format that people can easily digest. That's flipping amazing. And who couldn't use that?
And that's how I feel about it. And so I feel like if I'm, and the last, one other thing is about you were talking about gifts, right? And bringing joy. And what you were explaining was what I was thinking about. I'm called to bring joy. And that means giving experiences or creating space for experiences to happen. And just, I get the, when I see the other person smiling, or I can see the look in their eye and I can see that they're really enjoying, savoring that experience, that's enough to give back for me. I don't need it reciprocated. It's just like when I see the joy, doesn't matter what the experience costs. It costs time or it costs money. That doesn't matter. Here's the experience. Let's have this experience together. It's, oh, that was amazing. And I'm just like, I did what I'm supposed to do.
So
Right.
I would offer that you are seeing a reflection of your own joy. My personal belief is that joy is our birthright, and joy is part of that divine spirit. And it's part that we tamp down when we have to pay the bills and we have to do the laundry, we got to get the kids to school, we got to shovel the snow and all the
Mm-hmm.
goddess, right? When we can reconnect through the beautiful efforts of a friend or mentor, through music, through
Mm-hmm.
watching a little kid play, or do what I do. You go on YouTube and watch kitten videos. Now, come on. What is better?
What's better than that?
I mean, come on. It's just pure silly joy. And it bubbles up inside. And it's not that the video or this created the joy. From my perspective, at least the way I think right this second, because as we change, as we evolve, it's like the joy has been rekindled. Like it, oh, that's right. That's it. That's what I'm here to experience. Yes, we'll have grief and sadness and we'll have human things to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a real big fan of the and. We have trauma and stress, and there is always the invitation to deeper love and joy and kindness and compassion. And as I'm looking at grandchildren now, I want to leave them a more compassionate, collaborative, respectful, joyful world, not the one I grew up in.
Not the one I grew up in.
And that's what you and I are doing together.
Mm-hmm.
We're creating that world.
Absolutely. I'm with you. It resonates on so many levels. First of all, thank you. I think that sometimes we know we're on the right path, but it's nice to hear when other people see it too, and they acknowledge that. Because I think that just gives us more reason to do what we do. You don't need anybody to tell you that you're doing the right thing, but sometimes it's just nice to hear it. So thank you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
That's amazing. But you were talking about your grandkids, and I got two. I got two grandsons, and
Me too.
one's about to turn 11, and the other one is about to turn 5.
Oh.
And it's funny when I look at my son and I see myself, and I remember the first time I was with him and he was holding a grandson, and it was like, he had 3 generations, like, boom. Then my father comes in the room, and now you have 4 generations, boom. And it was like, man, I want to leave a better world for my grandson that my father had than I got. And my son is saying the same thing. And then I feel like there's a part of me that felt like, God, I wish I could have changed it over for my son and to have this experience. And he's doing well, but I know that he worries about the experience his son's going to have when he grows up. And there is this part of me that we can talk about it all we want to. Love, compassion, empathy. We can talk about all those things, but if we're not creating the environment for that, then we're just allowing the status quo to continue happening and society to continue going the way it goes. And one thing that stuck out to me, I was raised by boomers, right? And they had a different experience because they grew up during the Great Depression. And nothing, and I understand the whole generational thing, but generations repeat, right? It's almost, if you look back from a legacy perspective, generations repeat mindsets and there's cycles that happen. But I think what's happening now is that there were things that I learned from both my parents, a few uncles, military, and I learned not to quit. I learned that integrity is important. I learned that authenticity is important, honesty. And it's, you know what, we're better served when we are instilling values that make sense to us. And even as individuals, we have to take a look at the values that we have and make sure that they're in alignment with who we are as this whole being, this energetic, spiritual, conscious being that we are. Um, I challenge people sometimes when they say, "Oh, I'm all about love." And I say, love is unbounded and it's unconditional. So when you start talking about love, but only if you believe what I believe, then you're not talking about love at all. You're talking about something else. And there's like a reckoning that has to happen with that, or some kind of an awakening, enlightenment. Maybe we're on the precipice of that. I don't know. But I do feel like more people are challenging the status quo, which is a
I
good
agree.
thing.
I agree. And I think something that I certainly didn't grow up with, and I don't think you did either, is you didn't have the internet. So
No.
we're in very confined environments, and we had what, 3 TV channels? For any of you younger people out there, yeah, that's how we grew up. So that's not the way it is now. And one of the things that has been a gift with technology that I didn't realize, my dad was in World War II, so was my mom for that reason. And we grew up thinking that this particular country, they were the bad guys and all of this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Now I realize it's so clear. Everybody wants the same thing. They want to be loved, and they want people, places, issues, children, animals to love. That's what everybody wants.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yep.
And the more that our actions, individual actions, reflect that, and again, as best we can, then I think that's where we see this sea change.
Yeah.
That's where we see it. And we already see a lot of, I don't know how old your kids are, but I know my kids in their 30s and almost 40, my oldest one now.
Mm.
There's a lot of things that I just thought this is the way it is. And they're like, no, it's not.
Mhm.
No, it's not. And my 8-year-old grandson, they're just not, I don't know what your experience is. They're just not wired the way we wired the way we are.
Yeah.
Yay. More connected to nature, more willing to do the mindfulness kinds of things, and there's more awareness of those practices.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah, I think
interesting to me.
yeah, I think you're right. It is encouraging because there is so much that we're aware more that we're aware of now. I had a guest on, we were talking. He said, I don't know that if I was growing up right now, if I would be able to navigate this landscape. And of course, looking at it from the perspective of where how they were brought up and where they were coming from. Like there's just too many distractions. And on one hand, I had to agree with that person. I was like, it's interesting that you say that. I hadn't really thought about that question or even thought about that uh, possibility, but you're right. We watched the internet come, but we didn't have the internet. We watched the cell phones come, but we didn't start off with that. We watched war and conflict be televised for the first time. We didn't grow up with that. And now that's that information is around this 24/7. And on one hand, that is interesting and there is some value in that. Look, I had to join the military to travel the world and have the experience. If I had to travel the military, been in the military, I probably could have stayed in Maryland, DC, Virginia, and never gone anywhere and never had the experience. But because I was able to join the military, go to sea, and I think the first year I went to maybe 25 countries, the first year that I went, and I came back a different person because I was able to have the experience of one, connecting with and meeting new people from different cultures and having that experience. I got to learn how to regulate myself and build at least collaborative or at least cordial relationships with other people from different backgrounds. Because when you're on a ship with 30 plus people and it's for 2, 3 months, you have to learn how to get along real fast because conflict is not tolerated in that type of environment. But on the same token, it helped me see people and understand people better and figure out how to connect with people from different backgrounds, different experiences, and different upbringing. So for that, I would never change anything about that experience. And there were a lot of things that happened that were great, and a lot of things that happened that weren't great, but I still would change it and learn something from it. But now they can see what's going on in China. They can see what's going on in India. They can see what's going on in Europe. They can see what's going on in South America. They can see what's going on in Africa. And they get that information yesterday. Now, the challenge is the information they're getting factual and is that really what's happening? And I think sometimes you really just have to have the experience to know for sure.
And you can listen with your heart, but that is that's a learned skill.
Mhm.
And I agree, as wonderful as it is to visit other places in the world, it's not the same when they see it on TV. They see a video on learning how to swim. That's not the same as swimming.
Nope.
The same as swimming.
Not the same.
You got to get in the water.
Yeah.
So I feel that one of my invitation is to help the younger people in my family and in my world understand this gives you a snapshot. It opens the door to another culture. But let's go experience it. If you can't travel to Africa or to China, let's go to a restaurant. Let's go to a fair. Let's go to a festival. Let's go to an embassy.
Yeah.
Let's experience. There are so many beautiful, rich experiences that often families haven't had.
Mm-hmm.
And they just haven't. We did not grow up with anything in our little town. It was, I was probably in my 20s before we had any ethnic food.
Mm-hmm.
How crazy is that? This was just, if you wanted fried chicken, you could do it all day. But,
Right. Right.
but you couldn't get Indian or a
Mhm.
Mexican. You probably could get Italian in a pizza. But
Mhm.
just how rich these viewpoints can be. And if you understand that underneath everything, people want to be loved and loving,
Mm.
and they have a different flavor of doing it.
Yeah.
It's a different flavor. And why not experience these different flavors?
I love it. I love
How
it.
fun is that?
Yeah, it is the experience that we're here for.
Absolutely.
I started off a talk a couple years ago and I said, we are here as humans to have the full range of emotional experiences, everything from love, even down to hate, if you will.
And grief
But
and sadness and
all of it, everything in between. And it's not to judge the experience, but it's to learn and to assimilate and make sense of the experience. And in some ways, I will say, depending on what you believe, we chose the experience we have. Oh, we couldn't, I didn't choose to have, energetically, you chose.
that happens to be my belief that there's opportunities for your experience. I believe that as well.
But it's interesting. So here we are, we're having these experiences. And then the question is, are you learning from the experience or are you, for lack of a better word, frustrated with and angry about the experience, right? Because I think there's learning in all of it. Like I said, every experience we had leads to now. And you have the potential to choose to quiet the noise, if you will, and tap into the universe, consciousness, love, all of that, the ethereal, higher power, and get the guidance that you need to make that heart-centered decision or make the heart-centered choices to live the life that you intend to live. But you got to do the work to align around it.
You got to do the work. And may I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Have you found, this has been my experience, but I'm curious if it's been yours as well. When I have gone to those dark places that we all go to, that even in the darkness has been an invitation to share and serve others. So for example, I, like many millions of people around the world, was helping shepherd my dad through the last couple years of a devastating illness, through the operations and the hospitalizations and the rehab centers and the hospice. And I would not wish that on anyone.
Mm.
And 10 years after the fact, I can see the gifts, not only of that experience, but I've been able to help so many other friends and family face those same situations because
Yeah.
I could be the one that was like, okay, here's some resources. Let's take a breath. those are the people I teach to meditate. Let's
Yeah.
do some meditation. This is going to help you go through. Even those darkest times, there's an invitation to love and a way to serve and give to others, which in turn, it's another enrichment experience. I'm curious if you found that as well.
Yeah. I wanted, yes, have had a very similar experience, but I also agree that my experience is a little different. I didn't have that exact experience, but I've had different experience where there's been a lot of people who have certainly thought that the life was too heavy and too much and
Yeah.
made the decision that they were going to exit this experience. Um, and it's interesting when you think about how can people get there? And I can tell you that no one's immune to it. Um,
Nope.
and but life is so precious, and then there's a moment where you realize, wow, I'm here to do something different than this. This is not the way that you're supposed to have this experience. And I've had friends that have lost children to suicide, and I've had friends who have committed suicide. And just being able to talk to their families and being able to talk to the parents of the child who left this planet, being able to have a conversation with them so they can better understand and process that there was nothing you could have done. There was no sign that you're waiting, you're thinking you missed something. But being able to have an experience and give some counsel, and not a therapist by any means, but to be able to give some counsel and point them to resources because they're not alone. It's not like but it happened to them directly and they're having a direct experience. But I think many people don't understand that. And I've certainly met other people who've been in that same space that are still here and they're sharing their stories in a way that is helping other people. And I find that you're here and that didn't work out for you the way you were thinking about it and planning it because you were supposed to share that story. Because there are other people who think the same thing. You're supposed to share that story and you're supposed to change someone else's life so that they can make a better decision and potentially have an impact on the world.
It is such a honor to sit with people who are in those moments
Mm.
when you can bring love to them and allow them to do whatever they're going. People have to grieve.
Mhm.
It's not take this pill and you get off. You don't have to grieve.
Yeah.
But to hold people through that is just, it's a sacred experience. And it's obvious to me that's another one of your soul gifts.
Yeah. Well, thank you for so much for seeing that and saying that. Like I said, we're all here for a reason.
Yep.
And we don't know what it is that we're called. I've got more clarity about what I'm called to do. And I just feel like just do the things. Right?
Just do the things. There you go. Just do the thing.
It's like this podcast. Just do the podcast. Like, okay. Write the book. Okay. Just do the thing because ultimately, like I said, if you can impact one person, amazing. If you can impact 1,000,000, that's even better. And so I hope that we have shared things that are meaningful and that make a difference. And I think my last question for you before we wrap up this call, and certainly I want to invite you back because I think that we could probably talk for another hour easily. And I haven't decided if I'm going to extend the podcast for longer than an hour, depending on how it goes, but I will keep that in mind for the future. But if you had to think of one thought or one thing you wanted the people to walk away with from this conversation, what would that be?
If there is any issue in your life, any concern, any challenge, I would invite you to ask, how can I bring more love to this? More love to myself, more love to this relationship. How can I bring more genuine love that comes from the heart, not from the head? To me, that divine energy of love is always what's needed.
That's amazing. And I love that thought. And we will go out with that. Diane, thank you so much. It's been such an honor having a conversation with you. Open, honest, authentic, vulnerable. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your perspectives and your thoughts and your insights. I do want you to come back. I know you're an author. You wrote a book, right?
I did.
Please tell me the name of the title of the book and where people can get that from.
I did, and I will share a website that people can go to. It's morefromdiane.com. That's got everything on it. My first book was called How to Choose Love When You Just Want to Slap Somebody. And
I love it.
because I'm human, and there's lots of resources in there, lots of free things about my Be Love principles, and I would love for anyone that is feeling called to this work to explore that. And I appreciate that, and I really appreciate the fact that this is fun. This is
Yes.
fun, and that's what I want people to see. This isn't just sitting around meditating quiet all day. This is fun stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And that'll be posted in the notes beneath this episode, as well as all your social media links and connections and all that. So, Diane, again, thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to having you come back real soon.
I'm excited. Much love to you and everyone who will ever hear this podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.